Chapter 22. Shades of Lallaby. Trat jolts awake, like the sensation of falling in a dream except she'd truly fallen. Her whole body hurts badly, but nothing seems broken. Still a little dizzy from having tumbled through the air and across the ground, she looks for the train where she was with Tom. Far off on the horizon, the locomotive from which she had been thrown continues its journey. There is no chance of her catching up, and even if there were, he's probably not there anymore. Slowly and with some difficulty, she gets to her feet. She'd been injured before, but never this close to death. Exhausted, she softly whispers an incantation. A large magic circle appears on the ground, and from its centre emerges a fountain made of stone black as obsidian. Its base is circular with a small rim, forming the area where the liquid gathers. This reservoir is small, barely reaching Trat's shins. On the opposite side, an imposing sculpture adorns where the liquid flows. The fountain takes the form of a creature from Zara's mythology. It resembles a Zararian, but with feathered wings instead of upper arms and a serpent's tail replacing the legs. The snake's tail coils around the base of the fountain and ends buried in the ground. Its arms, held in a prayer position, receive a light red liquid that trickles from the statue's eyes, falling into its hands and then into the base of the fountain. Trat steps into the base beneath the liquid, which streams down her entire body. Wherever the strange reddish water touches, her pain diminishes, being healed slowly, at least compared to other magical healing methods. She stays there looking up, recovering her tired body, while thinking about what to do next. She doesn't think Tom is in danger, at least not of dying. She recognizes that bracelet, the one the emissary had pressed on him during the train ride, normally used on animals to keep them restrained and obedient, but that one has a superior ritual binding a person to their master. Just like on Earth, Zara once had its share of slavery, but that practice had been abolished long ago. However, that doesn't mean the knowledge to create such artifacts has been lost to time. Trat knows this all too well. It's one of Zainal's specialties and the very reason she fled her old home. The fatigue of her injured body is washed away by the summoned fountain, yet Trat doesn't leave. The sensation of the cool bath on this hot day feels too good, and she hasn't yet decided on her next move. First, she needs to know where Tom is. That shouldn't be too difficult. She will visit the house where she had taken him for his magic lessons and ask whoever is there. If she's successful, she can, with that information, inquire about his situation and only then know if it's worth doing anything else. As much as she likes Tom, she doesn't want to end up imprisoned or dead. As soon as Trat steps out of the fountain, the object retreats back into the same magic circle from which it had been summoned. She wants to dry off properly, but some people start appearing on the nearby roads asking about what happened. After all, a train had exploded not long ago. The train's wreckage lay strewn across the tracks, crushing crops in its wake. One of Lallaby's guards survived the impact and starts screaming in pain, not far from where she is. Without wasting any more time there, the girl summons her wings, which shine like a rainbow when hit by sunlight, and flies toward the center of Bushkar. Trat needs a few minutes to remember the exact spot where she had left Tom that day. It feels like much longer for her than it does for him. Still under the afternoon sun, the Zararian manages to reach the front of Temilo's house. Even afraid of what might happen, she crosses the carefully tended garden of the residence and knocks on the door. It doesn't take long for someone to answer. Yes? Temilo opens the door, a bit suspicious. Upon seeing Trat, he nearly shuts the door completely, leaving just a crack for his eye. Trat hadn't noticed her own sorry state, clothes soaked, shredded and smeared with blood. Of course, he won't let her in. Hello. I'm a friend of one of your students, Tom. I'd like to know if we could talk for a few moments. Upon hearing Tomas's name, curiosity gets the better of the old teacher, and he opens the door a bit more. How can I know you really know him? Not that he doubted it, but it's good to be sure. I was the one who brought him here. Tom couldn't even read the message they gave him. I imagine it must have been your daughter or some relative who gave him your address, right? Trat knows this because along with the address there had been a small expression of interest. Right. He opens the door, but not with the intention of inviting her in. And, how can I help you? The same person who gave Tom your address. She's an emissary, isn't she? Temulo grows more serious. It hasn't been long since Lallaby started performing the typical functions of an emissary, so her presence in Bushkar isn't commonly known. Yes? They can't keep talking there at the door. He sighs and invites her in. Come, sit here in the living room and tell me everything that happened. Trat enters the large residence. If she could choose, she wouldn't tell everything, but hiding something from someone with such influence is dangerous. So, even reluctantly, she starts recounting the events from earlier. Temulo listens silently, but his face says it all. At times he shows expressions of disappointment, discontent, and panic, especially when she tells him how the boy had been impaled on the train and the subsequent explosion. If we weren't talking about Lallaby, I'd find it hard to believe what you've described. But knowing her... He lowers his head. Well, I don't think we've introduced ourselves yet, have we? I'm Temulo Ghoul. I apologize for being rude earlier. My name is Trat Zanel. The teacher's face tightens, a reflexive twitch he doesn't register. It's very rare to find followers of Zanel in Bushkar. You must have travelled a lot to get here. True, just the navigation took an entire season. She laughs awkwardly. I don't plan on making that trip again anytime soon. I didn't imagine it took that long to cross the Guadama Sea. He realizes he's starting to ramble and puts those thoughts aside for another time, returning to the subject. Anyway, I appreciate you coming here and telling me all this, but why? I need to know where she took him if Tom is okay, and how they managed to find us. I'm glad we share the same sentiment. I'm also worried about the boy. Lallaby is a bit too obstinate. Once she sets her mind on something, she doesn't let go. He lets out a big sigh. After she decided to make that boy her first husband, I think she lost control a bit. Trat knows Lallaby lost control a lot, but the worst part was hearing the confirmation that the other seeks Tom as her husband. How did she get that bracelet? Even an emissary shouldn't have that kind of instrument. She's always had it. All emissaries of Gaul before her also possessed one. During the abolition conflict, these kinds of artifacts were confiscated by the followers of our divinity. Most were destroyed, but some survived. For academic purposes, of course, no one ever thought they'd be used. He looks at his visitor with slight suspicion. I'm surprised you recognized it. He's genuinely curious. I use something similar in my work. What she has is different, but not so different that I couldn't recognize it. And what is your work, if you don't mind enlightening me? It's nothing special. I'm part of the Pest Control Brigade of Bushkar. Right after speaking, she regrets it. Now Temulo can easily track her down, just like Lallaby. Not that it would be too hard since she's in uniform. I see. Not really, he had never seen pest control in action, only knew they existed. But of course he couldn't say that, right? And how did she find us? Could you tell me? Temulo irritates her, constantly dodging the topic and rambling, but she can't be rude. Lallaby is very talented. In one of Tom's lessons with me, she recorded the characteristics of his amandla. After that, it was just a matter of searching. But recognizing someone's amandla in a giant city like this should be impossible. Everyone's internal energy is different, just like their voice. In an empty room, it's easy to recognize who's speaking. Now imagine a city with everyone chattering. That's how Lallaby found him. It should be impossible, yes, but there are two very important factors. First, Tom's amandla is completely different from ours, so complex and sinister that it can't go unnoticed. The other point is that Lallaby is not normal. She managed to predict when the boy would return to Zara just by the intervals between his visits. Trat doesn't say anything for a while. How can she compete with an emissary? The best thing is to forget all this and return to her peaceful life. But then she remembers the images Tom had shown her earlier, his home and his world. He had chosen to share that with her. She couldn't leave him without knowing at least that he's safe. And now? She asks Temulo. And now? The teacher doesn't understand. Yes, and now? What are you going to do? You know where he is, don't you? I imagine she took him to the official residence of Dishkar. If there was a worse place for Tom to be. Trat can't imagine it. Well, at least that rules out any rescue attempt from me, she says, discouraged. Good that you're a sensible young woman. I'll think about what to do. I want to talk to Lallaby, put some reason back into her mind. I'll keep in touch. He gets up and walks to the door. All right, thank you very much for the information. I don't need to tell you this incident can't be reported, right? The guard will be involved anyway, but ideally none of this should spread through the city. What would the guard do with an emissary? So don't worry, I won't say anything. Trat leaves Temulo's house frustrated, but at least she knows where he should be and that he's not in danger. Lallaby had left Tom about 4 hours ago, though of course she measures time differently. The place where she is staying, and Thomas's prison, is the official residence of Dishkar, Kar's emissary, and the president of the city's parliament. As she is also an emissary, Lallaby holds a status similar to that of a diplomat on Earth. However, her level of influence and power is far superior. She had spent the entire morning participating in tedious meetings about legislation and foreign policy. Just out of curiosity, mine more than yours, I should mention that the domains of the deities in Zara are almost like countries, but with fluid borders. The organization tends to concentrate in city-states that control the surrounding regions. The greater the population of the given deity, the greater its influence. Where there is no clear control, or outside the reach of these metropolises, begins the role of Zara's free government, a parliamentary democracy elected by the people, whereas the city-states have their leaders appointed by the deities and their whims. There is no set date for Lallaby to assume the government of Mula Gul, but being Gaul's emissary, it will certainly happen at some point. During the meetings, she could only think about Tom, which bothered her a little. From the first day she saw him, she had already been interested in him. After all, he is mysterious, different, extremely handsome. The first impression he left on her was very striking, teleporting out of nowhere. Something no Zaririan can do, or at least so everyone believes. Beauty, mystery, and charm. It's not strange that she fell in love, but this is a bit much. She had never felt so out of control. Don't get me wrong, Lallaby doesn't think it's bad at all, but these thoughts make her job harder than it should be, especially when she starts remembering what they did the night before. Finally leaving her official duties behind, Lallaby exits her office happily that everything went well and on schedule, so she can go fetch Tom and show him the rest of the residence, maybe even spend some time in the gardens, or practice spells since that's his purpose there. Thinking about that, she wonders if it might not be possible to trap him permanently in Zara. Keeping him close to her while Tom's consciousness occupies that body is simple, but imprisoning his mind is complicated. Perhaps she needs help. Temulo might know someone with that answer. So she doesn't forget, Lallaby performs a message spell for her grandfather, requesting his presence as soon as possible. Starting to feel hungry, the small emissary leaves the main corridor that connects her office to the hall and begins descending the stairs to reach where her future husband is. As she descends, she can see Dishkar's entourage gathered in the hall at the foot of the great monument of Kar, which is unusual, but it happens. She approaches cheerfully to greet her fellow emissary, Dishkar, but she is surprised to see her conversing with none other than Tom. Lallaby thinks it strange, but not unthinkable, since the other emissary must have also noticed the curious characteristics of his Amandla. Without losing her respectable emissary posture, Lallaby approaches as quickly as she can. Reaching the ground floor, she slows her steps and calmly addresses Dishkar. Good morning, Grace of Car. An honor to be in the presence of the light of wisdom that illuminates our paths. She bows respectfully, which Dish returns. Good morning, Grace of Gaul. Yes, as always, Car blesses us with his knowledge, just as you bless us with all of Gaul's sweetness. Dish is extremely tall. Lallaby barely reaches her waist. She wears attire similar to what Tom had seen on Car's statues, but with more embellishments and golden details. She carries at her waist a large, thin sword, suited to her size. The blade is not just decorative. The most striking difference between Car and her emissary is the hair. The deity is always represented with long flowing hair, whereas Dish sports a short bob cut, her almost white blonde hair accentuating even more her yellow eyes, much like Lallaby's. I'm very glad to find you here, Lallaby. I'd like to introduce you to my longtime friend, Marifa Mile. Dish gestures to Tom, who bows respectfully. Lallaby is confused but couldn't show it, so she simply acts as if she doesn't know him. Very pleased to meet a friend of the Grace of Car. She lowers her head slightly in respect. I am the one honoured to meet you. Tom bows as if he knows Zara's etiquette. His voice is different, his manner of speaking as well. That is not the Thomas she knows. Lallaby observes Marifa closely. The amandla his body emits is the same as Tom's, but the person inside the body is truly someone else. The boy could never act like that. How is this possible? Of course it must be possible. After all, this is a false body, perhaps shared by multiple people. But how does Dish recognize the same amandla as Marifa and not Tom? Could this flow come from the physical body itself and not the consciousness within it? Unlikely. Lallaby, I apologize, but I will retire to my quarters. There are years of unresolved matters between the two of us. Should you need anything, just inform my entourage, and it will be arranged. Of course, Grace. She bows while Dish and Tom head toward the emissary's quarters. Years of conversation? How long has the boy been venturing through Zara? What doesn't she know? Lallaby was as confused as she was irritated. That is not her future husband. The body is the same, but inside, it's someone else. She needs to know what happened. With not much to do there, the girl heads to the room where Tom had spent the morning to gather some information.